All right. So I'm very blessed to be joined by a dear friend of mine today who I've known for quite a while. Ash Hamilton, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks for having me, mate. It's been a while, hey?
Yeah, it has been a while. So we originally met back in, was it like 2018 probably?
Yeah, 2018, 2019.
Yeah, yeah. So that's I think you were still at uni then, weren't you? Like uni studying um osteopathy, weren't you?
I reckon fourth year. Yeah, it was like
Fourth year.
coming to the end.
Yeah, 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 cool. So, Ash and I met. I was presenting for a course back then, which was FMA, which is all about bridging the gap between musculoskeletal rehab and strength conditioning. And obviously that was a big part of my world for about a decade, and opened me up to a lot of things. And then, since being connected with you and seeing like the journey that you've been on and in your own path that you've been on, and obviously down in Melbourne, moved up to Queensland. We made that similar move to get it out of that state, the prison state. Um, but just being able to see you in your journey, like your professional journey and your personal journey along the way has been pretty inspiring, which is why you're someone that I wanted to get on this podcast and someone that I wanted to talk into, because I know you have a lot of wisdom and a lot of experience to share personally and professionally. So, man, the first question I want to ask you, like, I mean, people can look you up if they want to see like the things you've done. They can look you up on Instagram, your socials, and we can talk about that at the end as well, where they can connect with you. But the first question I want to ask you is like who have you had to become like along this journey of becoming essentially, I would say, a master at what you do. You like obviously we all look up to different people and we see different people as masters, but then people look at us as masters at what we do as well. But who have you had to become along this journey of, I mean, it's probably over a decade now for you, to be a master at what you do and be a go-to at what you do?
It's a good question. I would say that I like to break everything into two. That's how I view the body. And, there's up, there's down, there's left, there's right. And I think the journey over the last decade would have been the first 5 years, really kind of chasing courses and knowledge and expertise and mentors and just trying to gain as much, I guess, understanding of the human body. And then I would say that the last 5 years was kind of the pivotal moment where things were flipped upside down. And it wasn't necessarily about how much I knew now, and it became more this internal journey of like, who is Ash? And throughout the process, really kind of having to work through my own struggles, my own tribulations, and finding a way out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the moment I started, like, kind of, I guess you could say, being in integrity with the message was when things really kind of started coming together. And I noticed that ripple effect in my business and with clients. So I would say, yeah, it was a journey of like knowledge, but then also the self-development and personal journey is probably what really flipped things upside down, but yielded the results.
Mm. What was it like? Because I mean, I've been on my own journey with this and everything as well, and for me, this is one of my big passions about the health and fitness industry. Is that for me, being in this industry for 15 years now, I came to recognize that through, I mean, I'll explain a bit, but I started with purely just like training people in strength conditioning, and then going through this journey of like, fuck, my athletes keep getting injured. I need to work out how to rehab them as well, because I was referring them out to people and then they come back and they wouldn't be in the condition. So I'm like, I'm just going to work this stuff out for myself. And then I
Mm,
went on this pathway of like realizing how much recovery affected injury through sleep and food and everything like that. And then through going down that rabbit hole, realizing how much stress
mm,
impacts someone's ability to recover and rehab and feel good in their body and be able to perform at a high level. And then that led me down the rabbit hole of the stress that's happening in someone's life is all related to not what's happening in life, but the relationship that they have to what's happening in their life. And I learnt that through working on my own shit as well,
mm.
realizing in myself and always having to go outside of the industry to find mentors, find men's
Yep.
coaches, find mindset coaches, embodiment coaches, and go on this essentially like this spiritual journey as well within myself. And through that, I became a better and better coach as well. And they're the people that I find that are the best coaches, are the ones that do their own work.
Mm.
Because what you can see in yourself, you can see in other people. So what really kickstarted that journey for you to realize that what's happening in someone's body is the, like, a lot of it is attached to the metaphysical. The what's happening, like the physical expression is attached to the metaphysical. So for you, for me, it was a bit of both, of like the professional side of things and seeing what's happening with stress and realizing, but then going on my own journey and connecting those dots. How did you start, like, especially coming through osteopathy? It's so clinical, it's so, and most regular osteos and physios and stuff are just so body based. Like,
Mm.
what opened up that whole world for you of, like, it's not just physical, but it's also energetic, it's mental, emotional, it's spiritual, all of that?
Yeah, for sure. Loaded question. I think studying osteopathy really created that foundation. And what I mean by that is throughout the entire course, it was the body's holistic. The body works as, many systems within one system. So I think that on some level, there was a level of openness to understanding how the body was interrelated. And then what really shaped me, as I said, that start of the personal journey was the first breakup. And that absolutely rocked me.
Mm,
I was not coping with it. All these emotions that I hadn't felt in, decades came to the surface. And I realized that as much pain as a shoulder or a back or a knee or a headache can cause, that emotional kind of pain was just so far greater than this physical pain. Well, it was for me anyway. And throughout the journey of kind of like finding people to help me through this emotional kind of pain, I started having kind of symptoms that were traditionally just physical, like gut symptoms, started clearing up. And
mm,
at the time, I just didn't understand what was going on. It was just like, I don't know what happened, but why is it when I've experienced this emotional breakthrough or this release, do my physical symptoms start freeing up?
mm,
And I think for me, the reason why it really caught my attention was because, a decade ago it was about bodybuilding. It was very biomechanics based. It was the rehab, it was the hands-on treatment, it was everything structural based. So when I kind of got exposed to the absolute other side of the continuum, and then I saw the changes, it's kind of like sometimes you can't unsee, you can't unfeel it. You might not know in the moment, but that's when I started kind of like being like, I don't know why this worked, but I'm no longer close to it. And I think
mm.
that that's where that foundation of osteopathy, where it's just like the mind is connected, or the mind and body is connected. I was open to like, let's try and figure this out. And as that started happening, who I started attracting in the clinic started changing. So I went from, I was working at a bodybuilding clinic, very
Mm,
heavily biomechanics training programs, stuff like that. I actually moved clinics, and that's when I started attracting a lot more chronic pain. And again, I didn't know at the time, but chronic pain by definition is anything over 3 months. And I can now see that the reason why the mind body connection is so pivotal with these individuals is because by definition, the healing should have happened. The body should have healed itself. And when it hasn't healed itself, we got to start asking the question of, wow.
mm.
And I really like this saying that in the law of thermodynamics that we can't create energy and we can't destroy energy.
Yep.
So if we have 100% energy available to us, but you might be like, Ash, I'm really fatigued right now. I'm tired. You said I have 100% energy. That's when we start asking, where is this energy being consumed? Where is the resources that's preventing healing? And typically that's in the past. And there was this one client, and I tell him all the time, I'm like, mate, you completely shifted things for me. And he was experiencing like hip pain, and he'd had it for 15 years. And we got him strong with the conventional approaches like lunges, squats, deadlifts, all kind of variations in the gym. And then every so often he'd send me a message and he's like, hey, mate, I just had a flare up. And I'm like, what am I doing so wrong? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And I was very curious at the time, and I guess probably because of my own experiences at this point, I hadn't connected the dots. And I remember saying to him once, I'm like, mate, what happened 15 years ago? And he's like, nothing. And I said, mate, what happened 15 years ago? And he's like, my parents split. And he's like, I haven't seen my dad, and I hate my dad.
Yeah. Wow.
And again, just something in me was like, how did you feel when your dad left? And he's like, helpless. And again, that urge came out. I was like, how do you feel when you have hip pain? And he's like, helpless.
Yeah. Oh shit.
And, it was this emotional experience. But then after that, his hip pain cleared up. And that was the moment where I'm like, again, I don't know what's going on right now. I don't know how that worked. But there's more to this human experience, this injury, this physical injury symptoms, whatever you want to call it, than I maybe once thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you balance those worlds of the physical when you know how much like the mental, emotional, I suppose like there's probably a couple of parts to this question. When you know how much the mental, emotional, spiritual um, contributes to the physical pain that someone's experiencing in you, and I mean your brand is very different now, so I'm sure you attract those types of people that have that level of awareness,
Yep.
and maybe there's some people that you don't, but I'm sure in those beginning phases there was people that were coming to you that were just expecting to get physical treatment as well. How do you go about opening those types of people up and getting them to see that it's not just physical?
Now that in itself is the challenge, right? Um, it started with a few things. I think just like anything, it starts with education. And from education, you can then have awareness. And everyone's going to have different levels of walls up, you know? Some people that are like, this is exactly what I want these days. They're like, here I am, find what you need to find. However,
Yeah.
it wasn't always like that. And I definitely didn't have the confidence to maybe unpack things to the degree I do now. And it used to start with, do you have any stress in your life? And they'd be like, no. And I'm like, okay, back to the physical. And then I started getting a little bit smarter with how I did it. And I'd be like, well, your mind tells me one thing, but your body tells me another. And it was like this kind of like de-armoring kind of statement. And the reason why I talk about it a lot is I talk about that when the cup fills up, you get symptoms. That might be a migraine, that might be back pain, that might be shoulder pain. So just bring that awareness to like when that cup fills up, your threshold's being crossed, that is going to lead to some form of symptom. And then I give this kind of analogy that it's like if I was to pick a pen off the ground right now and my back went, you'd probably be like, he's a fit guy. Like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
And that's where I talk about it's like, well, the cup, could have been 95% full. And that's when there's that last 5% that crossed the line, if that makes sense. So I
Yeah.
guess I'm trying to use a lot of models or analogies, whether it's my own stories or things I've seen with clients, to kind of be the mirror for that individual to kind of accept there's something going on internally.
Yeah.
And sometimes just even acknowledging if it's to a male, being like, I know as males we don't like to admit that there's anything going on and that we believe it has to be this big thing like someone dying for us to be like, yeah, we're struggling.
Mm.
But sometimes it's these little micro moments that over time just keep poking the blister and then one day it's too much. So that's a little bit about how I kind of try to weave that conversation in.
Yeah. And how do you see that with the work that you're doing now as well? Like, how do you see yourself and your work and what you're doing now? How do you see it evolving moving forward? Like, do you feel like you've hit the nail with how you want to work with people in terms of working with that physical and metaphysical, or like what is it that you feel like you're evolving or changing into now, if anything?
Man just keeps having the good questions. What I would aspire to kind of create or I guess give to this world would be that injury is a gift and injuries are an unwrapped gift and I want to help you unwrap that gift.
Yeah.
And having seen it time and time again how these physical symptoms are a reflection of our internal world, imagine if because you had shoulder pain, you realized that there was no space at the shoulder. and that you were stuck. And you realized that stuckness in your shoulder was actually a metaphor for where you were in life. Maybe it was relationships, maybe it was work. And as through the process, not only are you able to resolve the physical symptom, but you're able to free yourself in these other areas of life and really use that mind body connection as a pathway to personal development, to personal growth, where you see things on the way, not in the way.
Mm, mm. Yeah, amazing. So, because this is a big thing that I like really believe in it as well, is like when it comes to someone experiencing things that are happening in their body, there's the industry so I feel like the industry's backwards. It's so focused, and there's obviously outliers, and there's people like yourself doing amazing work and connecting these sort of these worlds together. But the industry's so focused on the physical side of things, and I think a lot of that comes from the probably the trends that have happened over the last couple of decades of bodybuilding, of powerlifting, and it's all about this external focus of how you look on stage, the amount of weight that you can lift, and all these types of things, which is also just based on like the judgment of others as well, and whether they feel like you're doing a great job or not. But I feel like that's what a lot of the wounds in the industry have come from at the same time.
Mm,
So in what I've sort of seen play out with being in the industry for a decade and a half is the industry is so focused on the physical that it completely negates the mental, emotional, and spiritual side of things.
correct.
And like I was talking about earlier, for a lot of people, if they want to get help from someone or in those areas, they have to go to different people. They have to go to an osteo or a physio, then they have to go to a psychologist, and then they have to go to a nutritionist, and then they have to go to like a spiritual healer or something like that. And they have to go to all these different areas or these different professionals to actually uncover and like resolve all these things that are going in with them, and they're all these segmented areas rather than someone having the knowledge and understanding of how all these connect together. So how is it that you see the industry and professionals in the industry evolving or having to evolve to accommodate that? Because this is where in my mind I'm like, is this just my own awareness, my own algorithm that's seeing this play out in the industry, and are other people seeing it, or is it just us as professionals seeing it because it's what we focus on? But I feel like the masses are catching on as well of like this understanding of mental, emotional, and spiritual healing, and not
Mm.
just physical. So in that, how are you seeing, other allied health professionals, other personal trainers, coaches are going to have to evolve to give people the support that they actually need?
I think there will always be extremes. And what I mean by that, if we had David Goggins on one side of the continuum and a yogi on a mountain, that would be the extremes, right?
Yeah.
One is very mentally, we're going to push through everything. One is just like, let's sit with everything. And I think that there is a time and place where people need that polarized kind of very one-sided approach. However, I think as the industry kind of moves forward, as you said, I think people are going to have to break away from being, I guess, a specific specialist and becoming a little bit more of a generalist. And
Mm,
the reason why I'm, I guess, quite confident to stand here and say that is individuals have so many parts of themselves, so many traits. And in order to treat the individual in front of you, you need to be aware of these different parts. And I think that the more, I guess, tunnel vision or very specific approach we go to, it doesn't take into consideration these different parts, and you don't understand how they talk to each other.
mm,
So I think that as the industry, and it seems to become more prominent, especially in like the allied health world, where because of
yeah.
social media, because of online courses, when people ask me what's an osteo, I say, well, it depends. Some osteos are like physios and chiros and coaches. I think that in order to treat the individual, have these different hats, but then most of all, step back and then see how they talk to each other And that's what I found when I went down these different rabbit holes. I used to see everything as a nail, right? It was like, oh, breath work is the answer. And then it was like, no, strength is the answer. And then it was like, no, emotions are the answer. And it wasn't until I guess I was able to see how these parts came together that I was able to deliver, I guess, an individualized approach to that person in front of me. So I think it'd be heading towards more of a generalized, holistic sense because I say while I'm treating a shoulder pain, I'm actually treating an individual, and
Yeah.
that individual has all these parts to them, and I want to know those parts so that I can best tailor that maybe specific approach to them.
Yeah. And like, where does someone start with all that? Like, because there's so many things to look into. Like you said, there's so many different areas that make up an individual person.
Mm.
So, I mean, what would your advice be or guidance to be with someone if someone was just to ask you, like, okay, this is awesome, but like, where the hell do I start with all of this?
It's a very simple answer, but the answers lie in the thing that you don't believe it is. And what I mean by that is when I was a bodybuilder and very gym based, I never thought the answers would lie in emotions. And I think that there's a combination of follow where you're at. There's always I'll go off topic, but I believe that every industry has a shadow. And by shadow, for those listening, it's like saying unconscious, or it has another side or a downside to that strength. For example, I'll speak for myself in this. My job is to help people. My blind spot was I didn't know how to help myself.
Yeah.
A nurse is very good at giving to others. They're not always good at giving to themselves. And if you can realize this kind of blind spot, if you were to take actions in that direction, you're going to have so much untapped potential, so much untapped knowledge to gain. And I think that that's where you start expanding as a therapist, but also your ability to relate to individuals because you start realizing they're two-sided human beings as well. So I think just acknowledging that side that you think it's like if you're always about the biomechanics, you're only going to get so far. You might be an 8
Mm.
out of 10 in that area of life, but when it comes to mental, emotional, and spiritual health, you're a 2. So there's so much room to grow in that other area of life so that you do become more rounded.
Yeah. 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 I agree. And I mean, I think this is where, like, my perspective is, I think this is where a lot of people, like you're saying, just have to actually take some time and self-reflect and being like, it's like people say it all the time. It's like the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. It's like, and this is where I feel like some people can get a bit off track. And I mean, I've seen clients before that have been seeing a physio for like 3 years, like 2, 3 years, seeing them like once a week or once a fortnight or once a month, whatever it might be. And they continue seeing them and their pain and their symptoms are exactly the same of when they first started. And
Mm,
I'm like, what makes you keep going? Like going back there if you know that you're not getting the result that you desire
mm,
of being pain free or being able to move the way that you want to move. And I think that's where people don't stop and reflect of like, okay, well, this isn't working. What else do I have to look at? And I feel it's the same on the probably people that are very obsessed, and I'd be one of these people with like the personal development world as well, and you're just constantly feeling like something needs to be fixed, and they're only working on, say, the mental side of things, but they're
mm.
not moving their body or strengthening their body the way that it needs to. And I feel like there's this there's that opportunity to sort of self-reflect and be like, okay, this isn't working. What do I need to do, or where do I need to go to in that? So do you see, I mean, I'm sure you see a range of people, but do you see people come in that have just focused on the mental, emotional, or people that have just focused on the physical and not quite getting where they want to get to?
100%. There's the two sides. Like I've got an individual currently, and they've focused so much on the do, and I really like the model be, do, have.
Mm.
And the way I've kind of viewed it when it comes to injuries is the do is like your rehab, your exercise, your sleep, your nutrition, your recovery. The B, I'm starting to view as more the energetics, the beliefs, the emotions, your identity. Where is all this energy kind of like coming from? But what energy are you also coming like from? So, for example, if the energy is I need to fix something, well, then you're never going to reach a destination because you're
Mm.
coming from I need to be fixed in the first
Yeah.
place. So those individuals would benefit so much from where is their energy, mindset, beliefs, emotions coming from. And then there's the other individuals who are very heavily spiritual or personal development world who are like, it's a block, it's something energetic. I got to sit with it, I got to feel it, but they never take action. They never be consistent enough with their physical body that gets you through places in life to actually allow, I guess you could say, the embodiment, or I like to say, the integration of those things that you've experienced. So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, cool. You work through your fear. Where have you built that trust in your body through exercises, through maybe doing an exercise on one leg where your foundation is trust in it to be strong?
Mm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I heard someone say the other day, actually, he's like one of my mentors, he's talking about, he's like, I don't know anyone that's meditated for 6 months in a row and then been hit in the head with a bag full of money. I'm like, that makes so much sense. But it's interesting you mentioned Be Do Have. That was like one of my first models that I started to understand of like, oh, okay, I'm connecting these dots of like how all this works together. One of my mentors shared it with me. And the way that I came to understand it was like, um, the do is, yeah, like about your habits and your behaviors and your routines and your rituals. And then the have is obviously what you have in life. And the be, what I started understanding was it's all about your relationship with self and your self identity.
Mm.
And Lao Tzu actually has a quote, which is one of my favorite quotes, which is the way to do is to be. And I was just like, oh, okay, I get this. So it's like the do is just, it's a byproduct of who you are. It's not something that you actually do. It's just a byproduct of who you are. Like for us, for example, like training isn't something that we do. It's who we are. Like if we don't train throughout a week, for example, we just don't feel like we're being ourselves.
Mm.
Whereas a lot of people have this attachment of having to do things and they leave the be behind and they get into the habits and the routines and they start building momentum, but then something happens in life and it throws them off because they haven't built the be. They haven't built the person they're being and they've been so stuck in the doing. So how do you obviously you bring people this awareness of like their identity and the mental emotional things that are happening. How do you help people step into that being?
I first like to understand what is the actual fear? What is the fear or the void that's driving who you're showing up as right now? And some of the questions I like to ask is like, what are you afraid that might happen if this pain never went away? And then figuring out what that would mean to them. And once I figure out what that means, then there's usually an I statement. So, for example, I had an individual today, and the I statement was, I am worthless. Now I have an idea of where that person is. Because if they felt like they were worthless on a deeper level, they're going to overcompensate. They're always going to be probably proving themselves. They're probably always going to be attaching their value to what they've achieved, how much they can give to others, how much they can support others. So by immediately knowing that information, one, the awareness, and they're like, sometimes it can be emotional and sometimes it's like, oh, wow. But two, now we can start putting in certain specific tasks or integration exercises to help them kind of unpack that kind of default. For other people, it might mean they don't matter. Other people, it might mean they need to be the strong one. Some people, it might mean they're broken. And I guess the first thing is bringing awareness to what's been playing subconsciously out in their life that's led to them having those experiences and who they are today. Ultimately, it's doing the inverse, realizing it's not true, realizing that it was an illusion, that there was a moment in their life that shaped that. And once we've kind of started there, we go back to the physical because I like to think that that's the roadblock. That's why you constantly end up in pain. That's why you constantly, get burnt out. That's why you're constantly trying to fix yourself. Again, let's free up that energy component. And then it's like bringing in more the physical kind of side of things. Does that kind of answer the question?
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So, I mean, when you started like, I'm sort of going back here, but I'm just
Yeah.
curious. When you started going down this path, obviously you had your own realizations, but like, where did you learn all this from, man? Like, where did you like? Because obviously, like, I know you mentioned osteopathy was mentioning like holistic health and holistic rehab, but they don't really go into it. They mention it, but they don't really start going down the rabbit hole. So, like, where did you learn all this stuff from?
A lot of it came from my own experiences, whether it was working with a specific mentor, whether it was doing, a 4-month course in a specific modality. And then through my own experiences, I like to reflect on why did that work or how did that work? Or when
Mm.
I unlocked that part of myself, what became available to me in my life. So I spend a lot of time reflecting on my own experiences. And then, as you said at the start, once we can see it in ourselves, we can see it in others.
Mm.
And then, honestly, man, I just got so curious, and I'm like, I would just bring it up in consultations. Like, there was a
Yeah.
degree of curiosity, a degree of just wanting to try something, knowing that if we don't necessarily have a thread or a pathway in this direction, we can always fall back to the physical,
Yeah.
to my hands, my rehab, and stuff like that. But it's interesting because a lot of the stuff that I do today in the clinic came from such different worlds. Like, for example, I recently did a 10-week acting theater course, and that course has nothing to do with osteopathy. It has nothing to do with necessarily the mind and the body in terms of a physical injury or elements standpoint. But what I learned in that experience completely shifted how I approach things in the clinic. For
Mm.
example, we had to do so much improvisation. When you do improvisation on a topic you don't know, you can't think in your head. You can't have certainty. And all you got to trust is the unknown. You got to trust that you got to take a step forward and you don't know where you're going to land. So, in that, I started learning how much fear there was when we don't know things, when we can't use our brain to figure it out, when we don't have a script, when we don't have a specific outcome. But again, when we go back to the body, so many individuals live in the fear of the unknown. They live in, am I going to have this for the rest of my life? There's so much, I guess, correlation. But I guess, again, what I learned in a different area of life, working through my own journey, allowed me to gain perspectives and insights that I'm like, oh, my clients go through this. Oh,
Mm.
this is a human thing. This ain't just you have a physical injury thing. This is a human thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I just started seeing the patterns of certain injuries and presentations had these same kind of themes.
Yeah. That's what's the on that as well. What's the most profound experience that you've had in your life?
I actually had this chat the other day. I was just like, how do you define profound? I think if there was two kind of like, I guess, themes or areas of life that really kind of maybe shifted me as a whole, they would be the theater, acting, and speaking stuff I've done,
Mhm.
because that's brought out so many parts of myself that I'd never expressed. Can you be soft? Can you be loud? Can you be raging? Can you be timid? Can you be seen and in all these different variations of ourselves? Because a lot of the time we don't want to be seen in these parts that are deemed maybe not lovable or not society okay, and that just unlocked so much and was so profound. So to, I guess, act out these things and be seen in it and speak these things was life changing. And then the other thing was quite pivotal and changing for me was actually getting exposed to, I guess, the sexuality realm.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is why sexuality was so potent for my growth is because sexuality is a spectrum, you know, and sexuality also is duality, and duality involves emotions, and it also involves the unconscious, conscious and unconscious duality, right? So having spent time in this kind of, I guess, environment, I learned about the different spectrums of Ash. And, when people hear sexuality, they think, sex, really. But I like to view it as more expression, self-acceptance. What parts of us do we have so much shame around? Because shame is a heavy emotion.
Yeah.
Shame changes our behaviors. So I think that going through this and seeing how much it impacted how I showed up in the world, how it impacted me in relationships, how it impacted me going after goals in my life. I think that these two worlds really kind of like just be like, here's Ash,
Mm.
and being okay with that. And that they would be the things that I would say has been most profound.
Yeah. Yeah, incredible. And that's one of the things too is, I mean, when you dive into a lot of different things, sexuality is highly attached to money as well.
Mm,
People's relationship with sex and their relationship with money is very correlated, highly correlated. So that's there's this like I mean, I've dived into so many things over the last decade of like you said, like becoming a generalist in so many different areas and uncovering things for myself in so many different areas of my life of like mental, emotional, relationships, sexual, family, health, all these different things that's really allowed me to discover who I am because people don't get taught this stuff. It's
yeah.
like you so I suppose that's a responsibility like for you as a health professional. You end up taking that uh role on as a mentor, as an educator, like, and you said education was one of the key parts. So this is a thing for me. What I've realized is that there there's so much disconnection that's happening. And for example, as a personal trainers have this, and you were PTing before you were osteo, like as you were studying, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And PTs have this attachment of like, oh fuck, like I'm like a fucking counselor to my clients as well. And they don't realize the importance of that as well
Mm,
because they haven't, what I've found is they haven't gone on this journey of their own inner growth, of their own personal development, of their own human evolution, essentially. And it's where you can have the most profound impacts on your clients. I've
mm,
done this a couple of times. I look back at my uh, like 10 years of PTing, and then I've stopped it and focused on coaching coaches mainly. But I look back on like the biggest moments that not I had, but my clients had. And I always asked them, like, when they would come to their time or they were moving away or we finished our work together, I'd be like, give me like a review or give me some reflection of like what you got out of our time together. And it pretty much always, like, I did some amazing things with people as well. Like you, been very blessed to learn a lot and know a lot about the body and be able to help people to get out of pain so they can pick up their kids and play sport at a high level and coach them, like very, very talented people. But usually there was a very common thing, and it always came down to like, I just really loved the conversations that we had and the things that you
mm.
helped me see in myself and the things that you helped me understand about myself. And so I suppose I suppose this is more a professional question. Those people that are aware of that, but they're not leaning into it. They're not leaning into, okay, I need to coach this person, not just physical, but mental, emotional, and spiritual, and not just like push it to the side or tell them to go see someone else or go see a psychologist or something like that. Like, what insight would you give to those health and fitness professionals?
Everything is built on trust. And if you can build that trust with an individual, you'd be surprised by how much that alone can facilitate healing. And what I've found is that when people trust you, not only do they give you more of a chance when you don't get it right, but they also give you all the missing pieces and the information that can help you then take that and apply it to more of a method kind of exercise or rehab or, a structural approach. So I would say don't even view it as coaching. View it as showing you care and having a conversation. And I haven't been to many funerals, thankfully, but at the funerals I have been to, all they talk about is the person.
Mm.
They don't necessarily talk about the accolades. And that individual in front of you, even though they're coming for a service and they're wanting a specific outcome, they're a human and they have a life and they have a story. And just like everyone else, they want to be understood and they want to feel like they're loved and they want to feel like people care. And when you have those ingredients, I truly think that the method itself is nowhere near as important because there's people that I know have gone to the specialists, been given a protocol, but because there wasn't that rapport and that trust, the
Yeah.
protocol didn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you, just to finish on, like, what do you think makes up a really strong, whatever you want to call it, like method, approach, strategy, philosophy? What do you think makes up? Because obviously there's many ways to skin a cat,
Yep.
and there's many different approaches that get amazing results. What do you think are the foundations that make up something that is really going to create profound impact on someone's body and someone's life?
Yeah, cool. Let's use the be do have kind of methodology just for this. The first part would be let's with the do is it doesn't matter what the methodology you use, whether it's breath work, energetic work, personal training, but get very clear on the game plan. What are the steps that get an individual from A to B? Because then you have structure, and that structure helps give direction and clarity and confidence to the person in front of you. The next part would be more the B, and that's the relationship component. What's going on in their life? Who are they as an individual? What are they experiencing? Because that will give you so much information and insights that you then might be like, oh, that approach actually isn't the one they need right now. And you wouldn't have known that if you just viewed it as a black and white shoulder pain equals this approach. So I think that that's how I would really kind of like bring the both together because it doesn't matter what level you're at or how much you know. We can all be human and talk about relationships in an individual's life. And everyone has varying degrees of methods and knowledge. So if you just bring those two things together in your own form and at the level you're at, you're going to have success.
Yeah. Awesome, man. I've loved this conversation. I feel like we'll definitely do another episode for sure. Um, Man, for people out there that are interested in what you're doing, what do you have going on at the moment? Obviously share about where you treat out of in your clinic down in Gold Coast as well. But I know you're doing a bit of a challenge, bit of a tour at the moment too, getting yourself out there. But yeah, share with people what you've got going on and how they can connect with you.
Yeah, cool. The easiest way would be Instagram, and it's just dr.ashhamilton. From there, I work in a clinic. I have my own clinic, and it's Step One Osteopathy, and it's in Burleigh Heads, Gold Coast. And the other thing would be is I'm doing a challenge at the moment, and that's 31 talks before I'm 31 in May.
What are you up
And
to?
this is number 15.
Nice.
So it's getting there. And I'm pretty much willing to fly anywhere in Australia to do a free talk to 5 people or more or be on a podcast.
Yeah. Awesome, man. What was the inspiration around Step One? Like why is it called Step One?
I actually registered the Mind Body Clinic and it had an exclamation mark for the I. And I went to the bank a week before I was opening, and they're like, we can't open a bank account like that. And I was just like, ChatGPT, and I'm like, I need a name. I need a name. Everyone's like, this sucks. And then I'm on the beach, and I literally was just like, I just need a name. Like, that's the first step. And then I was like, oh, step one. And that's how it evolved.
Nice, man. I love that. That's awesome. That's awesome. Cool. Any last words, man? Anything to finish up on? Any words of wisdom that you'd like to share?
I think under everything, it's about acceptance.
Mm.
And when you can accept whatever it is you don't want to accept, things just naturally come together. That would be my wisdom. And
Yeah.
yeah, just thank you for the opportunity. It's been great to chat.
It's been awesome, man. Yeah, we'll definitely do another episode for sure. So I've loved this. You guys will be able to obviously reach out to Ash if you've loved what he's been talking about, loved what he's been saying. We've been connected for obviously a long time now. Yeah, and love your work, man. Love what you're putting out into the industry. Love how you're helping people because yeah, it's definitely what's needed. So it's inspiring, brother. I love seeing your journey. And can't wait to see what's coming in the future as well.
I appreciate it big time, man.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Thanks, brother.